He fed the hungry, protected his city, and ruled the streets with old-fashioned honor. To the people, he was a savior. To his enemies, he was the storm. But in the end, it wasn't power, betrayal, or the law that ended Vincent Morelli, it was his kindness. In the old riverfront district of New Palermo, Vincent Morelli was a name spoken with both respect and fear. To the outside world, he was a businessman, owner of a string of legitimate bakeries, construction companies, and shipping docks. But beneath that polished surface, Vincent was the quiet head of the Morelli syndicate, one of the last old-world mafia families operating under a code that blurred morality and loyalty. Yet, unlike most men in his world, Vincent had rules. No drugs. No harm to women or children. No violence without reason. He funded scholarships for poor kids, helped widows keep their homes, and paid hospital bills for families who couldn't afford them. To locals, he was a Robin Hood in a tailored suit, Uncle Vince. But behind that compassion was a man haunted by guilt. Years earlier, during a bloody turf war, Vincent lost his brother and closest ally. Since then, he'd vowed to keep his family safe, no matter the cost. By 2019, Vincent was in his early 60s, ready to hand the business to the next generation. His eldest son, Anthony Morelli, was intelligent but impulsive, more interested in fast money and digital schemes than loyalty and legacy. Vincent, however, believed in peace. He started pulling the family out of racketeering and replacing street control with legitimate trade routes. But not everyone liked that move. To rival groups, Vincent's mercy was a sign of weakness. To his own men, it was bad business. And to Anthony, it was betrayal of the family's name. Vincent had always told his son, "Power means nothing if you can't sleep at night." But Anthony wanted to rule, not rest. On a warm evening in July, Vincent hosted his annual Feast of St. Lucia dinner, a private gathering for family, friends, and associates. The laughter, the wine, the smell of roasted lamb, it was a picture of tradition. Halfway through dinner, Vincent raised a toast. To peace. To family. To a future built without blood. Hours later, as guests left the mansion, Vincent stepped outside to say goodbye to his longtime driver, Marco Bellini, his friend of 30 years. That's when the gunfire started. 3 shots, clean, precise, professional. Vincent collapsed near the garden fountain. By the time paramedics arrived, the man who once ruled New Palermo's underworld was gone. Detectives initially suspected rival syndicates, perhaps a retaliation for Vincent's decision to cut off illegal arms deals. But there were no signs of forced entry, and security footage showed no unknown vehicles near the property. It quickly became clear. Whoever killed Vincent Morelli was someone he trusted. The only people with access that night were family, a few close soldiers, and his driver, Marco. When police reviewed Vincent's private office camera, which recorded without his guards knowing, they found something chilling. Moments before the dinner began, Vincent had a tense conversation with his son Anthony. Vincent said, "One day, you'll understand. This life eats what it feeds." Anthony replied, coldly, "Maybe you've forgotten who you are, Pop." "But I haven't." Detectives kept quiet about the footage, waiting to see who would slip. Weeks later, Marco Bellini, the driver and family friend, was found dead in his apartment, an apparent suicide. A note on his desk read, "He didn't deserve this. Forgive me." But the autopsy revealed something unexpected: no gunshot residue on Marco's hands. The suicide was staged. When investigators dug deeper, they discovered that Anthony had wired $250,000 to a hitman in another city 2 days before the murder, but the hitman never showed up. Instead, he was intercepted by Marco, who had realized Anthony's plan and tried to protect Vincent. Anthony had found out, and killed Marco to silence him. In the end, Anthony Morelli was arrested and charged with conspiracy to murder his father and obstruction of justice. His defense claimed insanity, grief, and manipulation by rival gangs, but the evidence was undeniable. When asked why, Anthony said, "He was going to ruin everything." The money, the respect, all gone because he wanted to play saint. The courtroom was silent as the verdict was read, guilty on all counts. Vincent Morelli's funeral was attended by thousands, from priests to politicians to street vendors he'd once helped. The city mourned a man who had tried to rise above the life that raised him. His wife, Maria, spoke at the eulogy. He believed love could clean the blood from his hands. And in the end, that love cost him everything. But I'd rather remember him that way, as the man who tried. Today, Vincent's old bakery still stands, run by his youngest daughter. The locals say that every Sunday morning, a single red rose appears at the door, no one knows who leaves it. They called him the kind Don, a man who believed compassion could conquer corruption. But in a world built on loyalty and blood, kindness can be the sharpest weapon of all.